Hey folks, how's it going? Today I want to talk about the 5 best ways I've made money as a gamer over the last decade. My name is Alex Kane. I've been writing for and about games professionally since 2013. I've tried it all, and these are the things that worked for me, and I hope you get some value out of it. So, number one, write a book. So I wrote a book on the making of BioWare's RPG Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic from 2003 for Boss Fight Books. And that was published in like April of 2019. Sold pretty well. I got a pretty like modest, small upfront advance, we call it in the publishing biz, where you get a check when your book is published or when you sign your contract or whatever the case may be. And then there's some sort of like royalty structure in place, generally speaking. It depends on all kinds of factors, the publisher you go with. But in my case, I get a portion of the proceeds of the profits, like on a quarterly basis, if it reaches a certain threshold. And let me tell you, like those book royalty checks have come in handy over the years. The electric bill comes due, water bill comes due, and suddenly there's a check for 700, $900, from a boss fight sale or something coming through. That comes in handy. So if you're somebody who plays a lot of video games and times are tough. Times are tough. Everybody's looking to side hustles. More people than ever are self-employed because of the job market just being utterly insane right now. Writing a book takes time. It is hard. You have to learn how to do it every time you do it. But if you just sort of plan it out and write it in chunks and you're a subject matter expert or you're very creative and a storyteller and you just kind of write one word at a time. Writing a book is just a great evergreen way to make a little bit of extra income and also establish your credibility, which will help you with the other items on this list. And by the way, we'll have about 2 or 3 bonus tips at the end for things to avoid. If you like making money and you want to do it with your gaming hobby in harmony with that, there are good and bad ways to go about this. Number two, in my case, make a documentary film. IGN reached out to me a few years ago before Starfield launched, and they wanted somebody to write like a 30-minute featurette script about the history of the BioWare or the Bethesda rather, the history of the Bethesda RPG for them, starting with like sort of Arena and Daggerfall, Morrowind on through the Oblivion, the Fallouts, and sort of looking ahead to Starfield and having written all kinds of things about Bethesda RPGs and things like that. Primarily known for kind of the oral history of Morrowind, published at Polygon in 2019. And another thing is like, I have an anecdote from my years at Killscreen where I sort of established my career as a games journalist, cut my teeth at $20 a pop on some articles at Killscreen, many articles at Killscreen. Um, and I remember one time the editor in chief popped into Slack. Jameen Warren said, "We need somebody to record gameplay footage of the entire Red Dead Redemption 2010 Mexico section." Okay. They needed on an urgent, quick turnaround. And the first time I ever saw this was the price is whatever you want to charge. This company, some client of Kill Screen's side business, something or other consultancy, was willing to pay whatever some freelancer wanted to charge to record the Red Dead Redemption Mexico section. I did not do that project, but the point being, if somebody has a need and you're the person leaping on it and you're going to fulfill that need and do a quality job and give them what they're asking for on a tight turnaround, you can ask for crazy money. And going back to the IGN documentary, one of my favorite stories from my career as a games journalist is, they're like, okay, let's talk fee. They offered me $1,000. I said, I was thinking more about 2,000. and they gave it to me. So that's something to keep in mind, is that you can always ask for more money. You can ask for double the money. I once asked for a $30,000 raise because I knew I was in a full-time salary job at the biggest newspaper company in the country. And I knew that I was getting woefully, woefully underpaid, taken advantage of, exploited, like pretty much every corporate employee in America right now. And I asked for a $30,000 raise to go along with all the new responsibility that was coming with this promotion they were offering me. Or kind of, I basically had no choice but to take this promotion. And they gave me a 15K raise. So you can always ask for more, go crazy. Um, Number three, consulting work in the video games industry. Once you've established a bit of authority, a bit of credibility as someone who is, a professional games writer, a professional reviewer, a critic, someone with expertise in the accessibility arena, or maybe you have a cultural background that is, makes you unique voice in the games industry. Maybe you have like a native background, or a queer identity, or whatever the case may be, whatever makes you you. If you have a unique perspective on games and media, you can, publishers, studios, developers, people who make games, they have all kinds of different needs behind the scenes where they need consultants. And there's all kinds of like weird horror stories and myths about what the role of a consultant in the video game industry is. Personally, I've done this job. It's often heavily NDA'd, so we can't really like talk about it, but it's like, um, often a company will just, they need a mock review to show whoever is providing their funding, perhaps, that they have, something worth investing in, and that professional reviewers who have, I've reviewed games for like Rolling Stone or Variety or RogerEbert.com. They want somebody like that with credibility, who has like a sort of normal video game reviewer voice too, to just come in and say, here's what we think of your game. Here's what we think it's going to do in the sort of review arena when you drop it. Here's what's going to happen to the Metacritic score. And yeah, you can get paid thousands of dollars for that job. And, you know, that's a constant need, as many games journalism roles and freelance budgets are drying up, and things are just absolutely nuts right now in the whole games and media space. Big publishers will always need consultants to look at the accessibility features, to look at, underrepresented identities, to look at, what kind of review scores is this going to get when we pour, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars into it and then unleash it into the world. Anyway, so number four, freelance PR work, writing, email, comms. You can do this for just about anything. TV shows, movies, events, uh, probably like art shows. In my case, I've done it for games and books. You know, these things need people doing the heavy lifting of getting the word out to the press, letting the world know that this thing exists. I always get I get PR emails every day by the dozens of, like, hey, want to review this Tower fan. Hey, we want to invite you to this movie premiere. Hey, we our game's coming out and we want you to know about the demo, and we want you to know about the review embargo, or the news, or such and such developer or publisher figure is, has this quote, and, let share it with the world. Somebody has to write all those emails. Somebody has to intentionally and carefully craft the message, the talking points, the kind of the voice, the creative voice around a project. So whether it's a rap album. I've actually written press releases about like a buddy's rap albums. I've done PR campaigns for a couple of indie horror games, one of which was like a pretty big successful one, from a former Bethesda developer who did the Axis Unseen, sort of a heavy metal horror game. And that did really well, and I've done, yeah, a big book launch in the nonfiction sort of games sphere. And yeah, you basically you can do a lot of good for these people by having a network. You know, obviously it helps if you've established yourself as like a games journalist, or somebody who works in games professionally for, a few years. And you've got a good email list that you've built out of contacts who want to know about the specific product that you're pitching. And that's really what you call this kind of writing, is you're crafting personalized pitches tailored to specific writers, editors, outlets. This is something that takes time to develop an eye and ear for, and to build up a network to be effective at this. But yeah, freelance PR is one of those things that's probably never going away. AI can't do what the best of these people can do. And there's it's like everything where there's fewer sort of staff jobs maybe, but every big publisher needs a comms person. Every game launch or review rollout, or DLC launch, like any of that stuff, they always need a PR campaign of some kind to email people and let them know about it. You can get paid very well. Number 5, write big reported features people want to actually read. I mentioned the oral history of Morrowind that I did for Polygon 6 or 7 years ago. That's probably my most sort of viral piece of journalism. People still reach out to me and tell me that they liked that and things. So I once traveled up to Canada, to Edmonton, in the frigid January weather at, like, overnight, to visit BioWare HQ, and write about Anthem. And I did a big reported profile with, like, I don't know if it was like 7, 8 interviews or something like that, about basically like the state of BioWare as a studio. And I talked about like the years leading up to Anthem, the kind of, how did Anthem come to be? What did they want it to be? Some of the other canceled projects sort of surrounding that era of BioWare. There was like an urban fantasy type thing that James Olin was working on that got canceled. And I think that's what led him to leave and go do D&D stuff, and work on like yet another canceled game, I think. That poor guy. I did a lot of on-site reporting for events surrounding like Destiny 2, surrounding Star Wars Celebration Chicago. I interviewed a bunch of the people who worked on the Matrix video games from back in the day and did an oral history of that. I interviewed the guy who built the R2D2 that you see in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, and who puppeteered R2D2 in like the scenes with Mark Hamill on the Millennium Falcon and things like that. Magazines will publish this stuff. Honestly, print magazines, like the very prestigious print magazines that you want to see your name in, will often pay less than like the less flashy websites that like really need that original reportage to kind of establish themselves. So there are trade-offs sometimes, and you got to kind of advocate for yourself and always ask for as much money as you can ask for, frankly. But yeah, longer articles that contain a lot of original material, like you go out and you call somebody up on the phone and say, "Hey, Kane Hodder, what was it like working on Friday the 13th, the game?" And, you quote all that stuff in a magazine article. People love to read that stuff. I love to read that stuff. That's the stuff that gets clicks. And in the case of Polygon and a lot of my oral histories and studio profiles and things like that back in the day, we called those like long form features. Those can pay thousands of dollars. I think I was paid $3,500 or $3,600 to write the oral history of Morrowind. So that was pretty nice. And I'm sure people have been paid more than that. So, uh, a few bonus tips. Okay. So I've given, 5 ways to make a good chunk of change with your gaming habit. Okay. There are also things you should avoid, in my opinion. It's always nice to have stable, reliable income that you can count on again and again. So you wake up in the morning and you have a bit of structure in your life, and you're not just like a freelancer who's like constantly pitching features and like working on like big lift kind of projects. Sometimes you just want that day-to-day news beat, sort of permalancing situation, and you have to be careful with this. I've done just about every version of this that exists. I've had a full-time salaried day job at USA Today that paid very well and had benefits. And for the first year, year and a half, that was a very nice job. That was the best job I ever had for that first year, year and a half. I've had some not so great jobs too. There are places like, Valnet. There are places like Gfinity Esports, um, that are essentially, in some cases, content mills, you would call them, where their strategy is SEO driven. It is Google is God, the almighty click is God, and nothing else. All other considerations are secondary, and you are expendable. And maybe there's no Pokemon such and such remake that will ever exist, but if people are googling Pokemon, well, whatever, Pokemon Violet remake, which at the time, or what was it? Yeah, like Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remake. Those eventually became real, but there was a time when it was purely hypothetical. But it was like you have to write up every article like that, and they would publish it, and it would be like, here's what we know about these games that are utterly hypothetical and do not yet exist. And those sites, they'll ask for the sun and the moon. They'll ask for speed. They will monopolize your day. They will tell you that you have to come to mandatory staff meetings, though you are not on staff. And they will bleed you dry, and they will just take all the soul and passion out of your love of gaming and your love of games journalism and your love of writing and destroy it. And you have to be very careful, because if someone wants to treat you like an employee of their company, and you are not, in fact, an employee of their company, and you are not getting a salary, you are not getting benefits, they should not be telling you what to tweet on social media. They should not be telling you what you can and can say and do out there in the world beyond their outlet. A sort of a side note to this is like, you are probably going to have a niche or a beat if you're in games journalism. A lot of people often, you know, they get into a game, and so that's, they're the Overwatch writer, or they're the Fortnite writer, or whatever the case may be. I'm just throwing out random games. Do not attach your identity to a single corporation. I've seen this with like the tabletop world. Maybe people become big into D&D. Maybe they become big into Magic the Gathering, or maybe Star Wars. Any whatever the case may be. If you attach your name and your sort of brand identity to a large corporation, they basically own you, and they know it, and they will take advantage of any leverage they have over you. They will boss you around. um, but the flip side of this stability talk, this stuff about having a stable, regular income stream, like I'm talking about here, if you have a salaried full-time day job that is good for your mental health, that gives you a feeling of comfort and security day to day, it's kind of getting increasingly rare these days. But when you do find that, like I had at USA Today a few years ago, you may find that it uses your skill set, and maybe you don't really write about games all that often, or maybe it's only occasionally. But if you have a comfortable day job, then what you might find is that you enjoy gaming even more, because it becomes a leisure activity again instead of your sort of day job. Um, there were like 5+ years where I was pretty much making my living exclusively as a guy who writes about the video games he's playing. And, I've done it for, 5, 6 years since then too. But like for those 5 years where that was like my life, that and being like a dad and a husband, I guess. But like writing about the video games you're playing makes the video games you're playing into homework. It makes them into work. And that does kind of weigh on you. It can add up and can grind you down and burn you out. And so you got to be careful of these things. Sometimes the boring, mindless corporate day job is your secret weapon, and it makes you enjoy the game time and hanging out with your buds a lot more. So something to consider. And then I've been a Twitch affiliate for exactly 6 months. So I would be remiss not to point out that Twitch is not the overnight get rich quick scheme that some gamers out there, passionate folks who deserve all the success in the world. You might find out the hard way that Twitch doesn't pay that well for a long time. So it doesn't pay off overnight. I've made just shy of $50 US over the course of 6 months as a Twitch affiliate. And it's hard to get Twitch affiliate. It took like a couple months to get affiliate. And then, 6 months after that, I've been streaming as an affiliate and I've made like $48, which according to Twitch's pay structure, their threshold, I have not made a single dollar directly through Twitch as an affiliate after 6 months. Okay. So Twitch is a hobby at first, and it will be a hobby probably for a while, unless you have an established audience elsewhere. But yeah, that's my 5 big tips. If you want to take your passion, your love of games, and all this time you're pouring into whatever game it happens to be. For me, it was Destiny around circa 2014, 2015. Destiny and Halo 5. I was like, I'm just playing games all the time. I got to make money. I got to figure out a way to make this sort of harmonize with my writing career. I was a professional writer and a professional editor, and I was utterly addicted to Destiny 1. It's like, how do we make this work so that my life doesn't fall apart utterly? And so I became a games journalist. And yeah, number one, write a book. Number two, make a documentary or write a documentary, film a documentary, make a YouTube channel. Number three, consulting on games as an expert. Whether you're a reviewer, an accessibility expert, or you have a marginalized identity and a perspective that, publishers need to hear from. Number four, be a PR freelancer. Get the good news out. Number five, write big reported features people want to read and make sure you get paid well for them. Ask for a lot of money. If this has been helpful, I'm going to do a lot more stuff like this. So, hit that subscribe button. We'll do this again sometime. And thank you so much for watching, folks. Have a good one.